Well, welcome everyone for a Tuesday evening at Dhammadharini Monastery. We're blessed to have Ayya Suvijjana back. She's in the audience right now and may say a few words at the end, towards the end of the talk. Please go ahead. She's given me permission to go ahead. So we start the evening with a little bit of guided meditation. So getting our bodies into a comfortable position. Excuse me, I'm going to adjust my cushion a little bit. It slid away from me. Yeah. So the beginning of the period is a good time, along with the sweeping, which I usually start us with, is you can see if there's something like a little bit out of alignment that needs adjusting and all that. Is anyone here brand new to meditation that they would need a little more detailed instruction? I think most everyone has had experience in some kind of meditation, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But one of the things we aim for is to be aware of what's going on in the present moment and seeing things really clearly as they are. So the body is a good object for exploration, and also allowing the mind to settle. It helps with the clarity of the mind if we can let go of a lot of extraneous thoughts and just being in the present. So I invite you to get in touch with this physical form we call the body. Maybe we call it our body. And then sensing the weight of the body, the contact of the body against whatever is supporting it. Whatever sensations you might be aware of. The touch of the cloth, the clothing against the skin. Temperature of the air. Any sensations within the body too, such as discomfort or maybe a little irritation or just the pleasantness of the warmth of the room, if the room's at a good temperature. And starting with the feet, start even with the toes, the soles of the feet. Just get a good sense of that area of the body. And bringing the awareness upwards over the feet, the ankles, and seeing the calves, just allowing the muscles to relax, inviting them gently to relax. So being aware of the, I feel the hardness of the bones and the softness of the other tissues, whatever's making contact. The arms in contact with the legs. As you're bringing your awareness up the thighs, it might be have your hands on your lap or your arms across the thighs. And feeling the smoothness or any rough areas. And feeling the pressure of the buttocks against the seat, the cushion. And feeling the coming upwards, you can feel the abdomen, hips. I feel the expanding and contracting of the abdomen with the in and out breathing. Just allowing the natural rhythm of the breath. Sensing the low back. And bringing the awareness upwards, expanding and contracting of the chest. You can feel the sides of the body also expanding. Maybe it's exerting a little bit of pressure against the arms. And again, you may be sensitive to the touch of the clothing, warmth, any sensation you're feeling. Just giving it your kind attention. Up to the shoulders. Really inviting the shoulders to be at ease. Downwards over the arms. Inviting the arms to be at ease. The hands at rest. All the way down to the fingertips. Maybe feeling the contact of the palm against the thigh, or the hands touching one another, however your hands may be positioned. And then kindly bringing the awareness upwards. And up to the shoulders. And the neck. Just giving your kind and compassionate attention to anywhere that's tense. Maybe a little bit of discomfort. And out from the back of the neck. And you can sensing the back of the head. Around the sides, the ears. all the way up to the top of the head. Feel the touch of the hair if you have hair on the scalp. Or the temperature of the air on the skin or the scalp. Or if your head is covered with anything, whatever is making contact. And then allowing the awareness to flow downwards over the forehead. Inviting the muscles to be at ease. Around the eyes. And jaws. I always forget to mention the eyes should be lightly closed. And you might sense the air passing through the nostrils and the throat. And the lips touching, lightly touching. And the teeth lightly touching and the tongue filling the mouth at rest. You might sense a little bit of moisture. And then bringing the awareness downwards again. And sensing the expanding and contracting of the chest, the abdomen, and this body breathing. If you feel ready to at this point, you can shift your awareness to the breath. Either sensing the entire breath cycle, the air passing through the nostrils, expanding the chest and the abdomen, and then the contraction and expulsion of the air. Or you may choose to stay at one spot, watching, just aware of the breath passing over this one spot. The nostrils, or just the rising and passing of the body as it's expanding and contracting at one spot, the abdomen or the chest. And it's natural for the mind to go off into thought. And if you notice that, just with utmost kindness and gentleness, bring the awareness back to the breath. And if there's any sound in your environment, just be aware of just the arising and passing of it, and bring your attention to the breath again. Just allowing the sounds to be. Allowing the thoughts to vanish. We'll be ending this period in a few minutes. You can take this time to reestablish your awareness if you've drifted off. And you can also reflect on what was useful, what you learned, what was helpful. Just from examining the body, aware of the thoughts that arise. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So I just took a brief refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And I tried to represent the Lord Buddha's, thank you, the Lord Buddha's teaching, the best to my understanding. Some of this is coming from various teachers, and some of it's coming from my understanding of the suttas, how I can understand what the Lord Buddha maybe, hopefully I'm understanding what he's pointing out here. So during our winter retreat, the last number of teachings was focused, there was on Vedana or feeling, and that's and I gave a talk last week focused on feeling, and feeling is one of the five khandhas, five aggregates. And this this week I want to speak about perception or sanya. So the five aggregates of clinging are what we confuse or assume, or maybe even is taught to be self, a self, ourself, as mind, myself. So the five aggregates are body, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and the six consciousnesses, the consciousness that arises at the senses, the five physical senses in the mind. And they're in Sanskrit, they're called the skandhas. And they're translated. Each skandha has a maybe slightly different translation depending on the translator. But perception is the third of the five aggregates, and it's one of the mental components. There's four mental components and one physical component. And the physical component, of course, is the body, and that's rupa. And Vedana is the Pali for feeling, Vedana, Sanya. I'll be talking about both Sanya and Vedana. Vedana, they kind of they influence one another. So I'm going to talk about them together a little bit, as well as focusing on perception. So we have feeling, perception, and then sankhara. And that Bhante Sujato, if you go to Sutta Central, he translates that as choices. But I like volition, and Ajahn Brahmali calls it will or willed actions or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but there's a mental formations. Sankhara has a lot of different nuances to it, and we're not going to get into Sankhara tonight, but I just wanted to say, if you're familiar with some other translation of Sankhara, I'm trying to cover that so you can cue into it from your past exposure to these concepts. So then, and then consciousness, which is a consciousness at the sense gates, and we will touch on those because that's related to perception. They're all interconnected. And that's what part of how they're aggregates. There's not only like a aggregate in each of the five aggregates, or they're each a collection of. I heard a Tibetan Lama talking about the transient collection. I was hearing him say this over and over again in a talk he was giving, and I was like, I couldn't quite catch, because of his accent, what he was saying. And finally it dawned on me, he's saying transient collection. That's the khandhas, that's the skandhas. And so that's what this sense of self is composed of, or how we perceive ourselves. So Sanya, as I was saying, is what perceives. That's the mental component that's perceiving, and how it acts is it. One description is that it marks things. So we see an object, and we're aware of it. The awareness goes to that object, and the perception, we see characteristics in the object, and then we mark it as something. But I'll get into that more. So it recognizes, the perception recognizes our objects of perception. There's so then it can be recognized in the future. So the sanya, or perception, arises independent on the object that it senses, that's from the sense gates, that arises from consciousness at the sense gates. And then there's a sixfold perception, which is, as I was saying, it's described as the object of the senses. The five physical senses, they're objects. So it's just forms visible by the eye, sounds, so sounds, smells, taste, touch, and then the Dhammas, the mental phenomena. So the Pali is rupa sanya, so that's we would say sight, but they say it's described as forms visible by the eye. So that's rupa sanya. Sada sanya is a sound, perception of sound. Gandha sanya is a perception of odors. Rasa sanya is the perception of taste. Potaba sanya is the tactile or touch, perception of touch. And Dhamma sanya is the perception of the thoughts or the mental formations, the phenomena that is arising. So as we perceive these different things, we're kind of piecing together the perception of our experience, of our environment, of what we're experiencing in the present moment. So we recognize objects through our senses, and then the object is labeled. So this is the mark. So I see something and I recognize it. That's a clock. Or I might confuse it as for something else because it looks similar. Like I learned something of that shape to be something else. So my perception of it could be correct or incorrect, but it's because there's some kind of recognition. So we'll say that, recognize, label it as, sights would be color blue or car. A sound, maybe we'd have barking of a dog, loud. So there's these labels that are that's how perception is working. It's labeling things. It's for future recognition or kind of our file cabinet of labels. And so we pull out, what from our file cabinet, some kind of label for our experience. So feelings and perceptions influence one another. And you might remember or know that feeling is the experience of at the senses of things being pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So we're perceiving things as pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, and then that's also categorized. So then we're recognizing something, and then that the Vedana or the feeling I've tasted something and it was pleasant, and I recognize something as having a pleasant taste, And then, so then my opinion about it comes up, my view of something is influenced by perception and feeling. So all these all start getting really compounded. So we need perception to be able to operate in the world, to survive in the world. It's actually, an important function of the mind to be able to operate in the world. And as a child, we learn these perceptions. Like, I don't know if anyone's raised, probably a number of you have raised children, but I remember just, I would go through with my child, and I have a son, and like I would say, blue, blue, or cat, cat. So it's like, and so this is prompting him to have these labels for things, so he recognizes it. So this is how we learn, and then he learns the cat is soft. We can pet the cat soft. That's pleasant. This is a pleasant experience. So then we start forming these views and opinions of things. It keeps building from our experience. But so they're conditioned and dependently arisen. They depend on the objects, but they're also impermanent, and they're also there's anicca and dukkha. They're impermanent and suffering, and they're subjective and relative. It's always changing and relative to what's going on. The cat may be pleasant at one point, but then the cat might be not want the child to grab onto the fur and scratch the child or something. So then there's the unpleasant. So it's all changing. It's all relative and dependent on the object of the senses. So they as I was saying, feeling and perception, they condition one another, and because they're so closely associated. And then their influence our likes and dislikes, which influences our views. And then we might start getting fixed views about things. And then they reinforce one another. And then we're likely to notice what's pleasant and unpleasant. This is so perception is dependent on awareness of an object, and we're most likely to be aware of the pleasant and unpleasant objects in our environment. So our perceptions are going to be more focused on those kind of things. And that really influences our views of the world. So why this is all important is I had mentioned that this view of self, and how we're always seeking out we would be seeking out what's more pleasurable and avoiding what's unpleasant. And how we're always constructing a self around these aggregates. So these aggregates, it's hard to separate them out. But when we start observing the individual aggregate, each individual aggregate, we can see how we are constructing a self based on some of these misconceptions, misperceptions. So I'm just considering, I have some notes here, whether I should jump forward. I think I will, actually, because I want to speak a little bit more about this, because they're conditioned, our perceptions are conditioned, and bringing our awareness to the perceptions helps us to have an influence on them, rather than just kind of being being kind of in control of our life. That we can start unraveling these preconceptions and recondition them. So then the Buddhist teaching, there's a simile, and the Buddha talks about perceptions in the poem or simile. He says that perceptions are a mirage, because our perceptions fool us. They so like a thirsty person is in the desert and they see a mirage and they think they can be satisfied by this water. And they're heading towards the water, and they know no matter how fast they're walking, it just keeps staying as distant as it was before. So we chase after our illusions, hoping to find security, satisfaction, and lasting self. This is how this illusion, and this I looked at the online dictionary, and a description of a mirage is an optical illusion caused by atmospheric conditions, especially the appearance of a sheet of water in a desert or on a hot road, caused by the refraction of light from the sky by heated air. So it's an illusion caused by conditions. That sounds like right there in the Buddhist teaching, right? This illusion of self caused by conditions. And one of our conditionings is our perceptions. And then the second definition of mirage is something that appears to be real or possible, but in fact is not so. So I think this is what the Buddha might say about the self. So in the Buddhist teaching, there's something called the 4 vipalasas, which is in Bande Sujato's translation, is a perversion of perception, or it's actually, there are 4. This is from the Vipalasa Sutta, and there are these 4 perversions of perception. mind, and view. Perversion, I think Ajahn Thanissaro translates it as distortion of perception, distortion of chitta or mind, and distortion of view or ditthi. And the four perceptions is taking things that are impermanent as permanent. And the second one is taking what is suffering as happiness. And the third one is taking something that is not self as self. And the fourth one is taking what is not beautiful. Bhante Sujato says, ugly. He uses asubha. It's ugly and as beautiful. So these misperceptions, or I also saw confusion, corruption. I don't remember. I think Bhante Bodhi says distortion, distorted perception, distorted view, distorted, and mind is like awareness. The awareness or the chitta is, well, the perception arises in the chitta and it's distorted. They come together. So as you might recognize, many of you might recognize the first three as the three characteristics. And these three characteristics are distorted. The vipalasas, the misconception of the characteristics. So this is ignorance. This is delusion. So bringing our awareness to these, and then also asubha. We're hoping that sometimes it's this asubha contemplation is often directed towards one's body or the bodies of others, this physical form, or food, or what we would like to see as pleasing, but it's actually because of the anicca, because of impermanence, and because everything is a sankhara. It's all conditionally formed. It's formed of many aggregates. It's not this discrete whole thing that's going to be around forever. And so if we start really contemplating it, we could see the unattractiveness of it. So this, I could read this sutta in its entirety. It's a very short sutta. And this appears in the numerical discourses, if anyone would like to see the sutta. So if you want to look it up, it's AN 4.49, and that's Vipalasa Sutta. And this is Bhante Sujato's translation. Mendicants, there are these four perversions of perception, mind, and views. What for? Taking impermanence as permanent, taking suffering as happiness, taking not self as self, taking ugliness as beauty. These are the four perversions of perception, mind, and view. So you might want to remember the word distortion too, if that seems distorted view, distorted perception, and distortion of, it says mind, chitta. There are these four corrections corrections, the 4 corrections of perception, mind, and view. What for? Taking impermanence as impermanence, taking suffering as suffering, taking non-self as non-self, and taking which is innately ugly as ugly. He says, taking ugliness as ugliness. These are the 4 corrections of perception, mind, and view. So the Buddha is encouraging us here to correct here we have view, our view of things, our perception of things, and the mental state that's holding all of that. So being aware of the vipalasas, being aware how we may be mistaken about these things, even at a very subtle level. I mean, we might understand intellectually, oh yes, everything's impermanent, but we may be grasping to something, at least wishing it were permanent. And that, or there's something in our minds that's so deep that we're not even aware that we're clinging to it as permanent, something. So the more we bring awareness to this, the more we're able to unravel that and correct it. This is what the sutta is talking about, correcting. So these perceptions are starting out with misperception and seeing them clearly, and then understanding. If we have faith in the Buddhist teaching, this is the next. This is the next sutta I have here, and this is also this is called perception, and it's in the connected discourses. It's SN 25.6, and it's just called perception. It must be Sanya Sutta, I think is the Pali. And so here's Bhante Sujata's translation again. And he says, mendicants, perception of sights is impermanent, decaying, perishing. Perception of sounds, perceptions of smells, perception of tastes, perception of touches, perception of thoughts are impermanent, decaying, and perishing. Someone who has faith and confidence in these principles is called a faith follower. So really training ourselves really to see the impermanence of phenomena, all the sense bases. This bringing up a faith follower is someone who is on the path to stream entry. So this brings up confidence in the Buddha's teaching when we really see really the discrete impermanence of things. So this is uprooting one of the vipalasas of things being permanent. And then the 3 characteristics help. If we get an understanding of one of the characteristics clearly, it helps with the dismantling of the other vipalasas. the other distortions of view, distortions of perception. So I'm going to end with this this extract from another sutta, and it has the simile of the mirage in it. So this is it's about the 5 khandhas, but I'm just taking the introduction with only the perception, the khandha of perception. And this is in the connected discourses again, it's SN 22.95. And this is called lump of foam. And this also appears in the Dhammapada. It appears in the Dhammapada, but it's a little more abbreviated. This is, but if you want to see the whole sutta, you can look it up online, or if you have a hard copy, you can look it up. So this is the sutta, starting with perception. Suppose that in the last month of the summer at noon, a shimmering mirage appears, and a person with good eyesight would see it and contemplate it, examining it carefully, and it would appear to them as completely void, hollow, and insubstantial. For what substance could be there in a mirage? So instead of being fooled by the mirage, he or she or they are carefully looking at this mirage. They're examining it carefully, contemplating it. Now they're seeing it as it is. They're seeing it for what it is, not what we would hope it would be if we're thirsty. Oh, I hope that I would want that to be, that's going crazy and convincing ourselves that, yes, this is something substantial and this is something that's going to satisfy my thirst. So instead, they're pondering it carefully. Examining it carefully. In the same way, a mendicant sees and contemplates any kind of perception at all, past, future, or present, internal or external, coarse or fine, inferior or superior, near or far, examining it carefully, and it appears to them as completely void, hollow, and insubstantial. So this is really pointing at the concept of non-self. For what substance could there be in perception? So here's the verse that goes along, or the poem that goes with it. Form is like a lump of foam, feeling like a bubble, perception like a mirage, volition like a banana tree or plantain, and consciousness like a magic trick. So taught the kinsmen of the sun. However you contemplate them, examining them carefully, they're void and hollow when you look at them closely. I think that's as far as it goes in the Dhammapada verse, but then there's more to this. Concerning the body, he is of vast wisdom. He of vast wisdom has taught that when 3 things are given up, you'll see this form discarded. Vitality, warmth, and consciousness, when they leave the body, it lies there tossed aside. Food for others, mindless. Such is the process this illusion, cooed over by fools, is said to be a killer, for no substance is found here. An energetic mendicant should examine the aggregates like this, with situational awareness and mindfulness, whether by day or by night. They should give up all fetters and make a refuge for themselves. They should live as though their head was on fire, aspiring to the imperishable state. So the Buddha's, that expression, the head being on fire, is that if we realized our turban or head was on fire, we'd make every effort to put that fire out. So this is every effort to penetrate these teachings, to come to the end of this suffering, this dukkha. This examining and seeing for ourselves and seeing things clearly. I've heard people that just really having the experience of anicca, even the rising and passing away, they're just really bringing joy, just really seeing things very clearly as they are. So this is what this teaching is about, is to uproot the ignorance and to see things clearly. And it also will bring us joy and happiness and freedom and wisdom. So I offer this for your reflection. And I don't know how we can do this gracefully, but I would like to invite Ayya Suvijjana. Oh, she's willing to get up, move her chair, move the mic, move the camera.
You can twist the camera.
You want to twist around? She has the.
Oh, that's not going to work. Let's see. Now, this is like a selfie. Can you see me now? Yes. I'm so glad that you spoke about the Vipalasas and about this important interaction between perception, between feelings and perceptions. How, oh, by the way, I was on a retreat for 4 months in the forest, preceded by a 1-month visit to South Carolina. I'm so grateful to Dhammadharini for supporting me during that time, and to all the people who are the supporters of our Sangha in making it possible for me to spend so long a time in not having to speak. I never had to open my mouth and speak during this whole 4 months, except before the meal to give my blessings to the people who are supporting and helping. The only thing I could add to Ayya Suvijjana's very helpful talk is a kind of a preliminary step that if there's a strong feeling, let's say like a resentment, then the perceptions can be biased in a way that creates a lot of dukkha, a lot of churning and suffering, and building up distorted views that are just taking us farther and farther away from where we want to be. So then to go from hostile feeling tone to finding a way to see, well, it's just the way it is, like something with patient acceptance, or something that understanding that that situation is not really aimed at me, and to replace, for example, replacing resentment with compassion, replacing a strong negative feeling with a more of a moderate or more pleasant kind of a feeling. And then there's sort of a further step beyond that of becoming very objective and very neutral. But I just think it's helpful. Sometimes you can't go from being caught up with strong feelings to being completely objective and seeing things clearly without that intermediate step of having the practice of kindness to bringing out making the feelings become more soft and more pleasant. Yeah. And then we can become very objective about it afterwards. So thank you. I'm happy to see everybody, and I'll be leading some of the regular programs going forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Ayya.
Yes. You may need to adjust that, is it?
Yeah, that's probably okay. Thank you. Yeah, so we have a lot of tools. I mean, of just observing the perception or misperception, but seeing the dukkha in it and using other tools to help with the overcoming the dukkha. This is the beauty of the Buddhist teaching, is there's so many different wholesome things we can develop to help overcome our misperceptions and our the way we're driven by these misperceptions. This was kind of a big topic, and so I went. If people want to stay a little longer, is that okay? If a person wants to excuse themselves early, they could, and we could just, if there's a question or comment or we could end if everyone's satisfied they have enough to work with. You can put your virtual hand up or unmute yourself, and if you have a question or comment. Looks like everyone's happy to be quiet and flotsam. Is that another word for foam? Like the flotsam is something that's carried on the water, like a lump of foam. I don't know if that's why the yeah. So to just really examine our experience closely and seeing how these misperceptions are influencing our lives, and that we can unravel them. So I'll just, guess I'll end there if there's nothing, no other comments or questions. And we can end by paying homage to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. If you have a Buddha image in your environment, you can turn towards that, or you can just bow towards the screen, towards the image here, the virtual image that you're seeing on the screen. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Thank you all for your patient listening.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you, Ayya. Good
You're
night.
very welcome.
Thank you, Ayya.
You're welcome.